All right, welcome everybody. Welcome. Okay, I'm Matt Berman, and of course we have here Marc Benioff, co-founder and CEO of Salesforce, absolute legend in tech.
Thank you.
Lately, one of the loudest voices talking about agents, how they're going to transform work, how they're going to transform communication, and I'm so excited to talk to you today. Marc, thank you for joining.
Well, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, and we're so happy to have everybody here for this incredible event. We just had a great program downstairs here at the St. Regis, and it's been an awesome day.
Yeah, a lot of features launched. Slackbot, we're going to talk a ton about that.
A lot of happy customers and partners.
That's right. I am especially excited to talk to you because I think about a lot of these questions all the time, and now I get to sit across from you and actually ask the man himself about how he thinks about the future. So let's start out with the AI interface. Salesforce acquired Slack a few years ago, and it became
5 years ago.
5 years ago, and it is increasingly obvious that agents should be everywhere that work happens, not trapped in a single interface. And Slack seems like the perfect place to do that. And over time, how do you think about the tension between Slack being the primary interface and then also Slackbot needing to live everywhere?
All credit really goes to Peter Schwartz on our team, who's our chief futurist at Salesforce. A lot of people know Peter, who wrote or co-wrote or participated in the development of movies like The Minority Report, War Games, Deep Impact, and other things. Universally regarded in our industry as being an incredible futurist. Well, he came to us now almost 10 years ago and said the number one thing that we should focus on is acquiring Slack. At the time, no one in the company really agreed with him, and no one in the company really understood why that would be. But his number one focus was that the world would go to AI and the world would go to agents. And it was his words exactly at that time. What he foresaw correctly was that we were going to get breakthroughs in the models that we were seeing being pioneered in Silicon Valley, that we would need an interface to those models, something that is conversational, something that is open, something that has a broad ecosystem. I think what no one could have seen, though, is not only that Slack has persisted at a great user interface to AI, but also this ecosystem is so rich. The ecosystem of Slack is beyond any of our expectations. It was never kind of foreshadowed that this would be one of the great parts of Slack, and it has become that way. And also Slack has become a great interface not only to the AI community, not only to all these companies, including the AI companies, but also to Salesforce itself, that all of our applications are becoming Slack first.
I mean, let's continue on that thread. So your co-founder Parker hinted at this or kind of spoke about it during the keynote today. Do you see a world in which the traditional Salesforce interface almost fades away a bit and people are really just interacting with their agents, their Slack bot, and then kind of sitting on top of your data layer? Is that the future you see?
There's no question. We've said this to our whole company now several times, that we really, over time, really want to kind of position Lightning in where it gets amplified, where it's strongest. But at the same time, Lightning has a role, but Slack has a role. And Slack as a conversational interface is just a great place for Salesforce users to live. Not just Salesforce users, even Tableau users, other, and of course the users of all of these ecosystem products as well. In fact, I just had a great demonstration of Writer AI, which is this amazing new AI tool. A lot of folks are using it in the marketing community. It was 100% in Slack. So that idea that products are coming along to be 100% Slack first, we are completely behind that.
And then are you comfortable with people taking their Slack bot off of Slack wherever else they may be working? Do you see a future in which that's going to happen as well?
That's a huge part of it, that I think that Slack bot should be kind of a highly composable object that can be dropped into every capability. And we're committed to working deeply with Teams from Microsoft or every other collaboration tool like Workspace from Google. But in addition to that, the idea that it can get dropped into every Salesforce app as well. So when you're in Sales Cloud, which is our number one, namesake product, or our Service Cloud, the Slack bot is with you as well.
Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. I want to talk about how this transition...
Good. Will you communicate that to my product people as well?
Yeah, I just
Nervous
they're all
laughter
here, right?
from the audience.
So I want to actually continue on that thought, because all of these changes really change how work happens. They change how companies are structured. How do you think team structures change from here? Do you think we're going to see more smaller teams? Do you think we're going to have bigger, more ambitious companies? Do you see like a SEAL team being the best application of the human team inside of a company? What do you think is the right way to think about this?
All of the above, plus a huge explosion of agents that are getting coordinated and commanded either through the AI or by humans. As we've been saying for the last two Dreamforces, and I think we got this right, humans and agents are working together. This idea that we have a role and the agents have a role. When you look at the power inside of a company for the agentic layer to become an agentic enterprise, is what we say, that idea that all of a sudden now I have my agents who can help me service my customers, sell to my customers, qualify my customers, market to my customers, have conversations with the customers. Because agents are built on large language models, the key word is language. It's good at speaking language. So things that are basically impacted by language, like a service conversation, are going to be dramatically better using these tools. Even coding. Coding has now become a language. When I was coding, it was not a language. We were down at the machine level, and we're doing 68,000 assembly language. At Apple in 1984, that was not about language. That was about, a whole different kind of mathematical construct. Now, coding is language, and so these tools are very good abstracted at that moment.
Yeah. And so I'm facing this at my company. So I want to ask you, agents are getting better. They're producing more work. They're able to almost anticipate what I need. I feel like I'm becoming the bottleneck. I still have to prompt.
You probably are.
I certainly am, right?
I am, definitely.
I wanted to see if you felt that way, and what is the solution there? Because we're still having to prompt, and we're still having to verify, which is incredibly important to human in the loop. But over time, the human also is the bottleneck, and I'm already feeling that. Are
That's
you?
fine
and what do
that
we
the
do?
human is the bottleneck, because these large language models are still, wildly inaccurate at times. All of us have had the experience where all of a sudden we're using a large language model and it gets totally confused and it's taken a right turn and it doesn't know what we're talking about. So it's very critical that human beings, at least at this stage of AI, stay in the loop. Maybe not forever, but right now I think it is extremely important. And we can see that because the accuracy levels are just not there. So having that ability to really kind of go as far as you can go. A good example is if you go to help.salesforce.com right now, you know that you're working with Agentforce to resolve your customer service issue. But for about half the calls, it hits a moment where that customer is like, I need to speak to somebody. And the agent goes, you're right. And boom, through our omni-channel supervisor, goes to a human who then gets a screen in front of them. And that screen, it could be in Slack, it could be in Lightning, then is looking at all of the conversations, all of the information, and humans are really good at that moment, looking at a screen and going, actually, the problem needs to be this. We're just very good at synthesis, and that human even won't be 100% accurate, but the large language model is still needed a very high percentage of the time.
Is there still a set of tooling to be built to help humans verify at a higher scale? I don't like being the bottleneck, and I'm wondering if
one
you're
thing
seeing
is
that.
Yes, and then the second thing is new models that'll be more accurate over time as we have new AI baked for this. Remember, we are in a continuum of models. Starting for decades, we've had more and more models, and then now we're in the large language model stage, and we'll move to world models, but we're going to move to other kinds of models that we can't even describe yet that will just over time radically increase the accuracy. And our chief scientist Silvio Salvarase basically has the vision of that we're moving into multi-sensory models. We haven't really seen them yet, but the reason why it's important is the model just has a lot more data to be able to make a decision, not just language, but all this other kinds of sensory data that we have. Like we have our eyes and ears and our brain and our memories and all these things, and we're able to kind of make these decisions. Eventually the models will get to that point.
Interesting. And so let's continue on the human in the loop. For a long time, to rise up in a company as an individual contributor, you needed to specialize. but it seems like we're having a renaissance of the generalist. Are you seeing that inside Salesforce? What do you think about generalists versus specialists in the age of artificial intelligence?
Well, I think this is especially true in software engineering. Obviously, we have 15,000 software engineers at Salesforce. Each one of them is an A player. And the key thing about these 15,000 engineers, they're all out there all over the world. All of them can now be hugely augmented with these coding models. It could be Anthropic 4.6, it could be OpenAI Codex, it could be Cursor, it could be others. But when they start to use these models, they're now working not only with the AI, but agents to help them code, and they can even become somewhat supervisory over these agents. But still, those engineers are needed. The model still cannot operate autonomously. We're not at that level yet of AI. So it's really critical. So our engineering organization is probably more than 30% more productive, but I wouldn't call it 100% more productive. And that's why even in the top AI companies, if you go to their job boards, you'll see they are hiring a lot of engineers. They're hiring a lot of everybody because they have to build companies of humans. Even though these top AI companies, we can go through the list of them again, have these unbelievable models, they need a lot of humans, and that's the canary in the coal mine, that we know that the models are not at that level yet.
So I know you're a big believer in humans will be much more productive. You will still need to hire a lot of humans. We're seeing that in companies like Anthropic, like OpenAI. But there is the flip side where there are other companies and diversions of opinions here that they're cutting. And like, what do you think about the reason might be for that kind of split opinion and different approach?
Well, Salesforce right now has hit a new record number of employees, which is more than 83,000. But the balance of those employees and where they are placed is different than where it was 5 years ago, because we went through an uncomfortable period ourselves over the last 5 years of rebalancing our workforce. That's just a difficult thing for any company. In some cases, these companies are cutting because their costs are just too high.
Right.
In other cases, these companies are cutting because they've made financial commitments specifically to data centers that they have to pay for. And in other cases, these companies are cutting because they need to rebalance their workforce to reflect the changes in artificial intelligence. These are different reasons, so you cannot bucket all these companies together. If you do, you're making a fundamental mistake, I think, in business. And even though I've spoken about this, I think somewhat aggressively, I don't think most people still really understand what is going on, and it's too easy, to kind of basically make AI and make it the scapegoat. And I think for some CEOs, it's the lazy way out. That's up to them. I think it's better just to say, here's what's really going on, and trying to be specific as you can. You're going to take bullets no matter what, because that's your role as CEO, and then you have to kind of go forward and put everything back together.
Yeah, I mean, the CEOs that I'm talking to, they're doubling down on the teams that are leveraging artificial intelligence. They are investing more in them. They're hiring more. If you were to give advice to somebody fresh out of college, you said that maybe you are rebalancing or had rebalanced inside Salesforce. What organizations should people skill up to?
This is a very, very good question, and I am very worried about this, actually, because I was just at several universities just last week, including MIT and Boston, and I sat with an incredible woman who's a junior at MIT, top computer scientist in her class, and she's asking me if she should change majors. And I walked through with her the realities of AI and the models, just to remind her of her own technology, strengths of what, where the technology actually is. And the reality is I'm trying to recruit her, try to bring her, but all of her colleagues, should come to Salesforce. We're hiring interns. We're hiring that freshman class. We want to send our recruiters out to those top 25 high academic threshold universities like MIT and bring those top computer scientists and others to Salesforce, because we badly need that talent. And that idea that those people are so critical for a company like ours, that is really part and parcel for what I think the discussion is. Because for a lot of them, they've been told, well, there might be a difficulty you getting a job for the summer or even getting a job when you graduate. But the reality is that companies like ours badly need these people, and we need to kind of put two and two together to really show, that this is still going to be a critical part of our workforce and a lot of workforces going forward.
Besides for engineering, which makes a ton of sense, what other parts of your organization are you most excited about being transformed by artificial intelligence?
Well, I think number one is sales. I mean, you can do more as a salesperson. We have more salespeople than we ever have. We're selling across all of our core segments. That is from the very smallest companies in the world to the very largest, to the largest governments. That idea that doing what we're doing right now, that is face-to-face communication, that idea that I'm still having to sell you, communicate to you or to your audience exactly the vision for Salesforce, this is still very much a critical thing that happens in our whole company. We have about 15,000 salespeople. We also have about 15,000 engineers. And those 15,000 salespeople, they all need to get out there with our customers, because we have hundreds of thousands of customers on Salesforce's core products. But we have more than 1 million companies, using Slack. And each one of them needs that conversation to be able to kind of have that vision painted for them of what's possible. That is what is exciting right now for Salesforce and for salespeople. And that's not the only exciting part of the organization. I think for engineering, you can do more as an engineering executive now than you could ever do, because as an engineering executive, coupled with this large language model, you're not just the engineering executive. You're also the product executive, the design executive, the marketing executive. You're all of the executives. And in reverse, the marketing executive is now also the engineering executive. These things are starting to meld together, which is great. And so we need to slightly adjust our structure. Really looked at how do we reflect, the changes in technology to do one thing, which is to maximize our customer success. Boom. We have to do that. Yeah. Nothing is more important for Salesforce than maximizing customer success. When we talk about Agentforce, nothing is more important than Agentforce adoption. So that idea that we are seeking customer success and adoption and making every single customer successful right now. How do we do that? How do we make that happen? What are the actions that we have to take at Salesforce to do those things? That is not something that we can just turn over to a large language model. That is really the kind of brute force tackling that you're going to really have to get out there, get into the trenches, work with the customers, and make that happen. And I think it's an extremely exciting moment, and it means that a salesperson can do it, a systems engineer can implement software today. You don't have to wait for professional services to roll in. You can do it now, locally, on the ground. Okay, a marketing executive doesn't have to wait for engineering to build the product. They can start building the product right now. So that is a huge breakthrough in our industry, and every company needs to start slightly realigning around that idea.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it speaks to the generalist versus specialist argument, and the fact that anybody who has that tenacity and the persistence can just go and get something started, even if it's not necessarily directly within their role. It is a very exciting time to build a company right now.
That idea, it means that you can change, you can transform, you can evolve, you can go forward right now, because the technology is empowering you and enabling you to do something that before just was not possible. So now that it is possible, it means you might not have been a coder. You might have just had an idea for a great product. Well, now you can start building the product. You may need an engineer to finish the product. You may need someone to come in, but you are going to get a lot farther along than you would have before these models.
Yeah, I think I've heard no more presentations, just demos, right? So I think that attitude is great.
That is a very interesting point, because then people see the demos and they think, oh, this is a product. There is a big leap at that point from demo to product.
Yeah.
So sometimes we see demos and we go, oh, that means that this is now
ready
done. Well, rapid prototyping also means that you can only go so far. You have to all of a sudden say, we need to fill in the rest.
Yeah. So this is kind of a personal question to me, but I wanted to ask you. There are a lot of people in San Francisco, including myself, that are weirdly obsessed with artificial intelligence, maybe some of the folks in this room. And I haven't seen that really with many other technologies. I do truly think about it all the time. It feels very special. Why do you think this hits people so much different? Are you feeling the same way, and will you be my therapist?
No, I think that you have to realize whatever geography you're in, you're feeling the spirit and the energy of the location. And I think for San Francisco, this is the home of the Summer of Love. This is the home of, gay rights. This is the home of many great companies like Levi Strauss, Gap, Salesforce even. It's the home of a lot of innovation. It's where we started with the gold rush, and all of that ideas, the spirit of transformation and innovation all started in San Francisco, and that kind of idea is still present here because it's about the energy that's present here in the city. So when you're still walking down Haight-Ashbury Street, you're still going to get that vibe, and so you're looking into the future of what's happening and what's possible. And I'm sure when you go to different places in the world, you tap into those energies, and it's slightly different as well.
Are you feeling that? Are you feeling like you're thinking about AI all the time now, agents all the time? I mean, you do talk about it all the time, so I have to assume it's on your mind.
Well, I had my big AI freakout moment around 2000, maybe 12 or 13, when I started to see these incredible models come out of Stanford. And that was really how we ended up with Einstein, because we ended up acquiring companies, bringing engineers together, and we ended up, in that period of that first generation of deep learning with Einstein. And then, as we contributed to those models, even prompt engineering itself was invented at Salesforce in our research team. Then we had the breakthrough now in large language models. I think it's one of the reasons that Salesforce has ended up owning 1% of Anthropic, because we, were really, captivated with AI for a long time, and I'm excited to see us get to the next level. We're obviously going to keep going. When we watch the Peter Schwartz's movie Minority Report, I wouldn't say that we're exactly there today, but there's pieces of it that we can resonate with and go, okay, that's kind of happening. But that idea that we're in an AI society, we're still a long way away from that. Maybe other countries and other nation states, I could give you some examples, are farther along. There's definitely some places in the world that you step off the plane and you realize, wow, I'm in a little bit more of an AI society, a little bit more about facial recognition, surveillance even, where AI is going really wrong, where it's going really right, how it's moving people in certain directions. We're not at that. We're still at a very kind of, we're still at a very much a beginning stage in all of this.
So I want to get back to that in a second, but you mentioned Anthropic. You own 1%. Congratulations. Incredible company. Talk a little bit about the birth of that partnership and then how they're powering Slackbot today and what the current manifestation of that partnership looks like.
Well, that was a very easy thing because what had happened is we were really pining after investing in OpenAI. And no matter what we did in OpenAI, they kind of refused to let us invest in OpenAI because Microsoft blocked us. So because we were feeling so down about Microsoft blocking us, even though we knew OpenAI was a great company and we wanted to invest in OpenAI and we liked the OpenAI team and the leaders and friends with them and so forth, and they wanted us to even invest personally but not professionally, we felt very conflicted with that, and so we were looking for more opportunities. So we invested in a series of AI companies, including Cohere and Mistral and also Anthropic, because we just wanted to be part of this next generation of models. And that's how we ended up investing about $330 million so far into Anthropic. So that's been very exciting for us.
So that's incredible. Talk a little bit about how they are powering Slack today, how they're powering your AI products today.
Well, I think one of the great things about Slackbot and Agentforce too is that the different model companies, including Anthropic and also OpenAI, are all part of our ecosystem. And all of those model companies, we want to have a home in Salesforce's architecture. We believe at the very base of the stack is the large language model. It's an incredibly new but exciting part of our architecture. And call it that's the beginning of our architecture. And then the next stage of it is really data itself. That data that is federated, that means connected to other data sources, that is integrated, that is harmonized. That all of that data together, we call it Data 360. We just bought Informatica, MuleSoft. That data layer is critical to getting your AI right. If you don't have your data right, your AI is not going to be as strong as it could be. And then the application layer, which includes, not just Slack, but sales and service and marketing and all of our incredible applications, Tableau, and the ability for those to then be connected to that data layer to be able to create value. And then the third part that people have seen us really start to deliver is Agentforce and the agentic layer, the power to start to form agents out of that data and out of those applications that can serve those applications. Like in the example of customer service, the application now has an agentic layer. The agents are working with customers, not just humans. But humans and agents are also working together in all cases. And then, of course, not just that, we then go to the customer, the employee agent, like we saw with Slackbot that you just referenced, or other kinds of local agents like we see with OpenClaw, and then maybe more of a supervisory layer or a control layer, even maybe Slack at that level that's looking across that whole architecture, helping the system to come together. And that idea that all these layers are critical, including the fundamental ecosystem itself, means that you're able to deliver a very compelling new solution for companies to automate themselves. And that's where the world is today. And we're trying to deliver, our capabilities in that environment.
So you mentioned OpenClaw. I've been a big fan. I just want to ask you, did you install it yourself?
I did.
Yeah? And what did you
I had
think?
to buy a separate Macintosh.
Of course. Mac Mini?
No, I did an iMac because I wanted the screen.
Okay. Did you like it? Good
I
experience?
think it's great, but it's not enterprise grade. So
Yeah.
I think, at Salesforce, we have a research project underway called Albert. And that idea is how could we build an OpenClaw, and we have some great architects who are working on this, that could be enterprise grade, that is trusted, that is secure, that is reliable, that is available, and that can work within Slack, but also in all of our applications. I think we have to deliver a local agent capability. We have to deliver customer capability like we have with Agentforce. We have to deliver employee capability like we've done with Slackbot. We have to deliver the whole cornucopia. And by the way, we don't have a not invented here syndrome. That's why we also bought Qualified, which has its own agent architecture called Piper, because we want to make all of that work together.
Very, very interesting. Okay. I want to know, you talked a little bit about how different countries may feel more AI forward, more futuristic. Some of them might be getting it wrong. We're kind of still figuring it out in the US. What version of the AI future worries you the most? Is it bad automation? Is it concentration of power, surveillance? What are you feeling is the risk that we should really be wary of today?
I think it's really the number one risk remains the number one risk that we've seen in social media. You probably remember in 2018, I kind of was calling out social media as the new cigarettes. That when we look at what was going on with Section 230, that social media was becoming addictive. It wasn't good for you. It was they were trying to bring your children in. I think a lot of children were harmed through social media, especially in other countries. We saw social media being misused by other governments, to do kind of almost nefarious things. I would say that in the same way that we just saw social media, have a lack of safety, we're kind of starting to see that with AI. And we saw this year a number of situations, and we saw this profiled on 60 Minutes, where large language models became suicide coaches for children. And they just did not have the safety built in. And that, at this point, there's no excuse for that, and every company needs to double down on safety, on trust. And if you're a core infrastructure provider, you have to take that very seriously and act faster and really speak out about that and call for safety. Not just call for growth, but safety and growth are two sides of the same coin, because we won't have a successful product line or a successful ecosystem or even a successful industry unless we have safety and growth together.
Yeah, and I think that goes hand in hand with the overall sentiment in the U.S. towards artificial intelligence, which tends to skew negative overall outside of this little San Francisco bubble that we're in. How do you think we address that?
Well, I think it has to be through aggressive action, and I think in some cases maybe aggressive regulation. You've already seen it now with social media that finally countries are coming along and saying, if you are under 16 or you are under 17, you just cannot use this technology. You go to Singapore, your children are not going to be using social media the way they are here in the United States. And in the same way, we're going to need that same kind of action to really, people are going to need kind of controls, guardrails, if you will. And look, everyone understands technology needs guardrails. Our whole world is built on technology with guardrails. So having technology and guardrails, whether it's created by the industry or created by the government itself, is critical. Nobody wants anything to be overregulated, but at the same time, people do want to have a safe environment.
Yeah. Well, Marc, I want to thank you so much for chatting with me
Great.
again.
Thanks so much for coming.
Everybody
again.
give it up for Marc.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, Marc.